Hi people! The other day I quickly looked over a guide for speed leveling Draenei and Blood Elves on a random website, mainly out of curiosity. Maybe I could learn something new, I figured. Turns out that guide basically told you to quickly get to level 10 and then get boosted. So I figured I'd make a guide that does not just tell you to get boosted. Boosting is likely the fastest way, but everyone is likely not particularly keen on getting boosted. And considering the nerfs to AoE farming, as well as the reduced amount of experience needed to level, the increased experience rewards from many quests, as well as many items getting buffed, it might not even be that much faster than just questing or regular dungeon grinding. Even now on Classic, a hunter following a guide and playing efficiently can do level 40 in 2 days played. Regardless, should you want to buy boosts for a character, go ahead, but this guide will not be mentioning them anymore. Instead, let's get into how you can efficiently level your Blood Elf or Draenei once the pre-patch comes out. The first thing you should do is grab a bunch of enchanted items and bags and mail them to your new character. With the pre-patch, mails to your own characters should arrive instantly. A pair of boots with a minor movement speed enchant, maybe gloves with plus 15 agility, or a dagger with 30 spell power. All of these things will greatly increase your leveling speed, especially early on. Essentially, any enchant you can use on your main character can also be used on low level items and sent to your alt. You also of course want to grab 4 big bags for your characters. Now, since the auction house is currently down and is not coming up again until pre-patch, it might be a bit difficult obtaining these items, but spam the trade chat or get them once the auction house goes live again. Chances are that the Blood Elf and Draenei starting zones are going to be absolutely packed. As far as I know, most servers currently don't have layers, and although there is dynamic respawn, it alone will likely not be enough. Or maybe it is, you will quickly notice. If it isn't viable to stay in the starting zone, you should make your way to a different one. The most efficient way doing this would be to group up with some guildies or friends and use a warlock to summon your new character to another starting zone. If that isn't an option for you, death skips can be very efficient when running somewhere. Below level 10, it does not give you any resurrection sickness. Let's say that you want to get to Mulgore with your Blood Elf as fast as possible. The first death skip should be done just as you enter the ruins of Silvermoon. Then run into Silvermoon and take the orb to Undercity. Next, make your way to the Zeppelins and ride to Orgrimmar. As soon as the Zeppelin reaches the shoreline, you can jump off and die from fall damage and some mobs, and resurrect just outside Orgrimmar. Then run straight into the Barrens, and as soon as you enter the Barrens zone, find a mob to die from and resurrect in the crossroads. From there, run south along the road until you pass a small canyon with a bridge over. At this point you are in the southern Barrens, and you will spawn at Camp Tarjaro, so death skip. Next, die as soon as you enter Mulgore to instantly get to Bloodhoof village. From there, run straight south to the wall at the starting zone and die again, which will take you to Red Cloud Mesa. You should put all your gear in your bag before doing the death skips to avoid breaking it too much. Or better yet, sell everything except your weapon, which you should keep in your bag. That might give you enough coppers to repair your weapon when it's broken, and even if you have to melee a few mobs to death with your bare hands, it's still well worth it time-wise. Just make sure to exclusively repair your weapon and not click repair all like you otherwise would do. By the way, make sure to grab flight points in the camps where you passed. The general guidelines for death skipping is that you will always get to the nearest spirit healer in the zone you're currently in. If you die in the Barrens, your spirit will spawn in the Barrens, no matter how much closer a spirit healer might be in an adjacent zone. So with that knowledge, I'd recommend you to head over to the page linked in the description and start planning your own routes. Just make sure that you are in fact closer to the spirit healer you want to resurrect at, so that you aren't sent back to where you came from. For Blood Elves, I suspect that Mulgore will be the least populated zone, partly because it's the zone the furthest away, and partly because it seems to be the least liked one for hordes. For Alliance, I suspect you should either go Dun Moreau or Elwyn Forest. Meanwhile, the Night Elf zone is probably the least liked one, it's also the closest one. In the end, it's up to you to decide where to go. Shaman and Paladin trainers are added to all capitals as well, so you will get your spells pretty soon, even if you should leave your Draenei or Blood Elf starting zone. If you do decide to stay, despite the zone being absolutely stacked, you should try and find a cut-off corner where you can just grind mobs without too much competition. This is a very obvious thing to do, but you should actually also do it and follow it like step by step properly. When following a guide, questing is usually a pretty smooth sailing, even in Classic. If you play a class that is known to struggle more with questing, like a warrior, then I would recommend trying to stay a level or two above what the guide recommends. There is no experience penalty for doing green quests unless you're 6 levels above it, and up until level 40 that won't technically even be possible, as quests will turn grey before you manage to get 6 levels above them, and when they are grey you will get a pretty hefty experience loss. And meanwhile you do receive less experience per kill for green mobs, you do kill them faster, so it's not really anything to worry about, and it will also save you a lot of time running back to your corpse. Make sure to look for a TBC questing guide before you start leveling your character, should you want a fast and smooth run. If you really want to, there are of course a ton of consumables you might get. Food buffs, potions, elixirs, sharpening stones, oils and whatnot. I'd personally recommend a bunch of mana and healing potions. They are usually very cheap and they can save your life. Anything above that is of course nice, but it's also usually more costly. However, it's usually not that bad should you just avoid dying. With instant nails, it's very easy to stack up on what you're missing when leveling. Should you be leveling a class heavily dependent on weapons, such as a shaman, paladin, warrior, hunter or rogue, you should buy weapon upgrades from weapon vendors. Until you get your first green weapon, just getting a new white weapon from a vendor can be a massive upgrade. Even at level 3, should you have about a silver, it might be well worth it. You could also, of course, buy rare weapons with your main to have ready for the later levels. Also, of course, the same can be done with all other item slots, but weapons are of course the one having the biggest impact, why it's worth focusing more on. Depending on your personal situation, both in game and in real life, you might want to consider just waiting a day or two before you start leveling your new Blood Elf or Draenei alt. I know it's annoying to wait, but if you find it incredibly slow during the first day of pre-patch, it might just give you a better experience overall to simply wait a bit. Trying to push through an early, overly stacked starting zone is often incredibly time consuming and very annoying as well. Spending 4 hours to reach level 6 is not a rather nice time to have. Maybe it's just better to wait until tomorrow. I mean, you will reach max level at some point. Make sure to grind when moving from one place to another. The end more time efficient, but it will also be more gold as well as helping you keep an edge over the quests. Like mentioned before, try being just a level or two above the mobs that you're fighting, that will make a massive difference. Try and minimize your time not fighting. Every second spent with your auto attack of cooldown not used is technically a DPS loss, meaning, in the end, a time loss. So whenever you're fighting a mob, make sure to move to the next one at the same time. Casters might have a harder time doing this, but everyone else should do it in between swings. I'm well aware that most people are pretty sick and tired of world buffs by now, but their impact on low-level characters is absolutely massive. Rallying Cry of the Dragon Slayer alone can easily double your damage output for 2 hours. Because of this, I would recommend you to keep your Hearthstone in Orgrimmar or Stormwind. Even if you have to fly for 15 minutes to get back to where you were, it will easily be worth it. Many servers have their own Discord where the world buffs drops are announced or written out beforehand. Personally, I wouldn't recommend orienting your questing too much around world buffs, as I feel like it easily just gets tedious and removes much of the freedom you have while questing. But if you, for example, quest through the Barrens or Westfall and you learn that Onyxia buff is dropping in 10 minutes, just make sure to get over to the capital before that. If I remember correctly, you do need some reputation with Stormwind or Orgrimmar in order to be able to get the buffs. I think it's friendly. Leveling professions while leveling your character is often a fun experience and sometimes the smoothest solution overall as well. However, should you want to reach max level as fast as possible, the only profession you might want to get is First Aid. A kind of neat trick you can do with First Aid is to sit down once you've started the bandage channeling. Sitting down increases your health regeneration from spirit by 50%. Either just press X or make a macro to sit down. There is a huge amount of details to work on when maximizing questing speed, and the best way of improving is simply by practicing. But I think this is a pretty good place to end the video. I hope you learned a few things and found it helpful. Make sure to subscribe to my like. I'll be back soon with another video, and until then, see ya!